Salute.
Salute.
Beach is open again.
Give thanks to life, boy. Uncle Keith was treacherous. But boy, everything back in our gear now, boy.
How things?
Boy, beach open back.
So we're making a run then?
Oh, get till about weekend. Go on there up and down business during the week. Weekend and free, we're going to make a beach pump.
Just the wild scene though.
You forget that, boy. I done start to get a while already, boy. So, when you making?
But honestly, right now, I'm real proud. Tobago just received UNESCO Man And Biosphere Designation. As a matter of fact, Northeast Tobago.
So is that like an award or something?
Yeah, it's international recognition. And that's why I thought, we could come up here to Castara, to be honest.
Wow.
It means that Northeast Tobago is a global example. Everybody looking at us now. Everybody's looking at how man and the environment in Northeast Tobago working in harmony. We are now a global example. So the people world over looking at how man and the environment in Northeast Tobago can work in harmony. And that's really what it's about. So we're really proud right at this time. And the Man And Biosphere program, it's not going to change anything. It's not any new laws, because we are the example. It just means it just fits in good. Just three things we're looking at right now: preservation, which we're already doing. The Main Ridge, Little Tobago, St. Giles, we're already preserving these places. So we know how to do.
Sorry to cut you. Nice man, tourism.
Right. Fair enough.
And we see the Environmental Secretary Kwesi Devine showing off some of his acting chops. And to speak further to that pride about Northeast Tobago being awarded the UNESCO Man And the Biosphere Designation, we have Linford Beckles, who is the Director of the Environment, who was the national rep at UNESCO's committee sitting, as well as Aljoscha Wothke, who is the CEO of ERIC, Environmental Research Institute of Charlottesville, the body that did a great deal of the technical heavy lifting towards the designation application. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. And Linford, I want to start with you, please, asking, what does this term, what does this Man And the Biosphere mean?
Well, thank you very much, DK. Thank you for having us and highlighting us here in Tobago. The UNESCO Man And the Biosphere program is really a program that is aimed at demonstrating how the environment and man can actually live in harmony. We know that for our socio-economic well-being, humans depend very much on the natural gifts that we have been blessed with, and it is our God-given responsibility to take care of these gifts, not only for the current generation but for future generations. So getting the designation is really an indicator of the good work that we have been doing, but more so it is an indicator of the promise that we in Tobago, we in Trinidad and Tobago can achieve in terms of enhancing the relationship between the environment and us, the citizenry. So we are extremely proud. We are very, very proud that we have received this designation. It has been a very, very long road. It has been a process to which very many people have contributed. And I want to make a very important point that this is not just an award, this is not just a designation for Tobago. It is actually a designation that is national in nature. Very many people based in Trinidad would have contributed to this process. People at the Ministry of Planning and Development, people at the National Trust, the Ministry of Education, at the EMA, very many other organizations. And of course, many of the agencies in the Tobago House of Assembly did make a very positive contribution to this process, as did the members of the NGO community here in Tobago, headed, of course, by the Environmental Research Institute of Charlottesville.
And speaking about that NGO community, we want to bring you in, please, Mr. Wothke. What are some of the things that were used, or what are the factors, the process of getting it? Take me through those steps, thank you.
Well, we really started with evaluating what kind of UNESCO program would be best suited for Trinidad, for Northeast Tobago. And we looked at the World Heritage designation, and we looked at the Man And Biosphere designation. And by talking to stakeholders, experts in various fields, from culture to biology, geology, tourism, arts, based on those assessments of huge variety of stakeholders, it became clear that Northeast Tobago is really exceptional regarding its connectivity between communities, culture, and natural heritage. So after assessing and defining that road, we went in and looked at what are the properties that made Northeast Tobago special. Why should it be designated? And obviously we came first to a point where we thought this is an outstanding area of Trinidad and Tobago and for the region regarding its biodiversity, its ecosystem connectivity, but as well as how much people are really connected and depending on their natural resources and how this is expressed through their cultural heritage, and which is a very strong connection that can be displayed. The possibilities and the setting, the framework setting has been very important, and we were able to demonstrate that a program like the UNESCO Man And Biosphere program has exceptional potential for being successful based on the existing legal and policy framework, based on the existing capacity of civil society and state agencies, based on the progress that has been done in the last 4 years through other programs that have been implemented specifically regarding protected area management, and based on the progress we had in a stronger involvement of the key players, especially the first Tobago Environmental Partnership Declaration that was done in late 2019, last year. So the process was really to identify the specific properties that make Tobago an outstanding example for the small island states in the Caribbean to implement a program like this. And that's an important aspect. The designation is something that is based on what we were able to demonstrate, but now a program starts. So the work is really starting now. And this is part of, we got a tool from UNESCO that it's up to us to use wisely and adapt it to our needs. Studying other UNESCO sites throughout the world has shown that some sites are profiting tremendously, whether it's tourism, whether it's blue and green economy, whether it's improvement through research and education.
And we want to talk about that, and we want to talk about that profiting and monetization in just a bit. But with less than a minute before we take the break, I want to ask Linford, please, because we're talking about specific things. So take me through the exact demarcation of this area when we say Northeast Trinidad. What kind of communities are we speaking about?
Okay, thank you again. For those of us citizens of Trinidad and Tobago who are very familiar with the Tobago landscape, the area is really, it's really a combined area, meaning that it's a terrestrial area, but it also includes a very large marine area. Now, the area that we are talking about is about 835 square kilometers. That is something that is quite large. About 80% of that is actually marine area, right? But in the context of the terrestrial, area that it covers the area demarcated by the village of Belgarden, which is on the Atlantic coast of Northeast Tobago, and it goes all the way on the Caribbean coast towards Mariah. A lot of people might be very familiar with Mariah. Mariah is associated with the Tobago Old Time Wedding, which is one of the staple activities of the Tobago Heritage Festival.
All right, so with that, we take a break. We are speaking with Linford Beckles and Aljoscha Wothke. Stay with us. Man and the Biosphere is what we are talking about, that designation. So we have so much more conversation when we return.
I believe that the Man in the Biosphere program is a great incentive for the recovery of beaches, reefs, the environment, and as a spearfisher, I see it as a plus, as there would be more fish in the sea, more corals, more life, better game.
So we have congratulations coming in from all spheres for the Man and the Biosphere designation, recently awarded to Northeast Tobago. And Aljoscha, I want to start with you, please, because in terms of the participatory approach to that designation, the kind of conversations that you're having, we just saw congratulations from a young man. How has it been getting the message of what this is, what this designation means to different members, different stakeholders? What has that process been like?
We engage with most of the communities. Actually, we have meetings in all of the key communities in Northeast Tobago. Some of them were well attended, others not so well attended. I think this is partly because people at that point of time 2 years ago, it was not something really tangible. The important aspect is that a management plan has still yet to be designed for the area. Right now, the table is open, and over the next 2 years, this participation and the community outreach and the talks to all the stakeholders is important, because it will be a user-based design management plan. It should be a plan that is really taken into consideration the concerns and the proposals and ideas that people that live in the area have for sustainable development, and mix that with expert opinion and expert advice.
And I'll bring Linford in here in terms of saying, okay, well, it's one thing speaking to the people, but the formal processes, what was that situation like? Was it a hassle? Did the powers that be with regard to policy making say, okay, this is definitely something that we want to facilitate?
Well, yes. For once, the process was not well. We can't really describe the process as being a hassle from the point of view of the involvement of the powers that be, as you describe it. All players were quite eager to pursue this particular designation, and it really started formally with the involvement of the Ministry of Planning and Development, and as a matter of fact, the Minister Camille Robinson-Regis, they would have formally signaled to UNESCO that Trinidad and Tobago is interested in pursuing this particular designation for Northeast Tobago, and that happened, I think, sometime in around May, June 2019, and for that we really have to thank the ministry. Then, I mean, there were significant contributions from a lot of other people. The people at the National Trust, Margaret McDowell, and so on. They really made a significant contributions. One of the first things that they actually did was assisted us in actually getting the Mainridge Forest Reserve, which is an integral part of this Northeast Tobago Biosphere Reserve. They actually assisted us in getting it declared as a National Heritage Site under the National Trust Act. The people at the EMA, they were very helpful in terms of helping to review some of the technical documents. People at the Ministry of Agriculture and so on. But I think I also want to make a very special mention of Susan Sherland, who I believe is now the acting permanent secretary at the Ministry of Agriculture. She was very helpful in giving us guidance very early on in the process when she was at UNESCO, and that made things a whole lot easier. And of course, the policymakers at the Tobago House of Assembly, they were extremely helpful to all of us, supporting the process in tangible and in some intangible ways. And in this particular regard, mention must be made of the former Chief Secretary, Mr. Kelvin Charles, the current Secretary of the Division of Infrastructure, Quarries and the Environment, Secretary Kwesi Devines, Secretary Hayden Spencer at the Division of Agriculture, and the former Secretary at the Division of Tourism, Nadine Stewart Phillips.
And I want to come back with Ansel Dennis, the Chief Secretary, in a little bit. And on that, I'll pose that question to you, please, Linford. But, Aljoscha, is this just about tourism? And how does this potentially impact tourism? Is it a matter of going for large numbers? Is it a matter of doing this virtually? Is it a matter of saying, okay, well, we're going to be dealing with boutique type styles? Or how does it potentially impact tourism?
It is definitely not a program that is only a tourism program. It is by far larger, but it includes tourism. And it includes an aspect of tourism, which is, we call it sustainable, eco-agro, community-based science tourism. Definitely not in large numbers, because large numbers are hard to control and have a heavy impact on the natural and the cultural resources. But it might very much look into specialized niche tourism at a higher end level, whether you could call it boutique, and you could call it a higher end specialized travel attraction. We have so many, it's just, imagine it like a museum. In a museum, if you have thousands of people going in and the same thing, looking at the same thing, it takes away from the scenery, it takes away from the experience. And the same thing like for Northeast Tobago, there's certain limits of acceptable change for how many divers can be on a reef, how many birders can be in a forest without impacting negatively. I think it is the perfect recovery tool for post-COVID for tourism in Tobago. We have a strategic advantage to our Caribbean competitors at the moment.
And I'm very glad you say that, because one of the things, because we started off with Kwesi Devines and he was speaking about the fact that they were in Castara at that point in time. One of the things I love about Castara is that it doesn't feel touristy. You just can go and be a part of the community as opposed to saying, hi, I'm a tourist, here I have a camera, all these sorts of things. But in terms of getting back to you, please, Linford, THA Chief Secretary spoke about this facilitating beauty, resilience, and prosperity. How are some of the ways you see that playing out?
The Chief Secretary is quite right, and so on. And in saying those things, he's speaking to some of the core goals and objectives of our involvement in the Man And Biosphere program. Firstly, one of the main goals here is actually conservation, and that's one of the key benefits that we will actually get out of this. In the context of some of the protected areas that are already part of the Northeast Tobago Man And Biosphere site, namely St. Giles Island, Little Tobago, the Managed Forest Reserve, these are already protected, but they are going to benefit. They are going to benefit from added protection that's going to come through the management plan that we're going to develop, and so on, so that some of the things Aljoscha is talking about. Being very mindful of limits of acceptable change in the context of how we implement our tourism programs and so on with respect to visits to those areas. Those are things that are going to be considered in the context of the management plan. This program also helps us to deal with lots of other issues, climate change and so on. When we conserve the critical resources that we have in the Managed Forest Reserve, we conserve the resources that we have in our marine space, our reefs, and things of that nature. We are actually making a very positive contribution towards dealing with some of the negative externalities associated with climate change.
And I want to thank you very much, Linford, in the sense that, yes, one of the things is conservation, but we have no more time to conserve at this point in time. Nice thing, it is a good first step and a good conversation, first conversation of many more to come, hopefully. We want to thank you very much, gentlemen, and on behalf of the entire news team, we thank you for joining us, and have a good night.